Good evening. I'm calling the Monday, November 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, first up on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have any requests for changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda this evening.
I move to approve the agenda for November 8th, 2021, Monday.
All right, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Moving on, we have the minutes from the meeting held on Monday, October 25th, 2021. Do I have any requests for changes or concerns about the minutes? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 25th.
I move to approve the Planning Commission minutes dated October 25th, 2021.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Moving on, we have two public hearings this evening. First up is Shutterfly. This is a request for a planned unit development concept review on 16.2 acres, planned unit development district review with waivers on 16.2 acres, site plan review on 16.2 acres. Will the proponent of this project please come forward? And good evening. If you would state your name and spell it for the record and tell us about your project, please.
Yeah, my name is Terry Helland. I'm with RSP Architects. Terry is Terry, last name Helland, Helland. I'm here on behalf of RSP, the design team, Tempest Real Estate, the ownership group, and Shutterfly, formerly known as LifeTouch. And this project, existing campus, is located at 1100 Viking Drive, near 494 and along Viking and close in proximity to the old Viking practice facility. Next slide, please. Oh, I have the clicker, that's right. Sorry about that. This project, the project approach, this is about solidifying Shutterfly's presence on the campus for the next 12 years and keeping approximately 500 to 700 employees and those jobs here in the city. Currently, there's a parking challenge with the site and the existing campus. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. This project is the consolidation's also gonna improve the stormwater management on site, along with adding additional green space on the campus. And in addition, it'll provide an amenity space for the Shutterfly team on the campus. First off, what's going to happen is we are talking about demolishing the current west building of the three-building campus. The three buildings we'll see in plan here in a moment. One is a connection building, the lobby, an east building, and then the west building is the building we're removing. This is going to enhance the entry and drop-off area for Shutterfly team members and guests. The west facade will need to be rebuilt as a part of that, as well as providing landscape improvements and additional green space and a lawn where the former building was sitting. We're also bringing the parking lot and improving the parking lot with additional green within the islands and adding additional islands. And then the last item has to do with adding the trail, nearly 1,500 feet of trail along Viking Drive, and for its entire length as an amenity to the city in conjunction with the city and the Tempest team. Originally, we were going to build that, or the city was going to build it. We've been in discussions, that last item. Actually, we're talking that we would do the project with the city, and there's discussions and negotiations about how that is being paid and the assessment for that trail. The one PUD waiver that's required, actually we're improving the site from a standpoint of pervious area. We're adding approximately 8% to the pervious area that's there versus the impervious ratio that's needed, or that you want to meet that 30%. So you'll see the impervious area gets reduced from 63 acres down to 55 acres. The site itself here is located just north of 494 on Viking Drive. Lake Smetana is off to the north. You'll see that blue outline denotes the three buildings, and then the parking lot that fronts the entire site on the south side of the buildings. This is a plan view of the three existing buildings, the westernmost building, the center lobby connector, and the easternmost building. The new plan would remove that westernmost building, keeping the east taller structure, and then re-emphasizing the lobby connection and drop-off space. This also, when you look at the overall site master plan, this building is central to the entire campus and keeps the pedestrian lengths from vehicle to front door or either door relatively the same. Here's an enlarged plan of some of the modifications. You'll see we're going to looking at prairie grasses and natural vegetation, replacing where the building was. There's some temporary drive work that needs to be done as well. This is a view of the existing lobby connection space. You'll see also there is a fountain located directly on axis with the entry point. In the new plan, that fountain gets removed. There's a new canopy trellis structure that actually wraps this lobby element and provides direct access, and then we're adding a set of doors and patio out to that western side as a connector to the lawn space. Here's a view of the final building. Once the western building is removed, you can see the canopy structure, the existing building, and the current lobby. This is what it looks like today. One of the things with the existing building that should be known, when the original project was done for Life Touch, which now is Shutterfly, the lower level is a servery and kitchen space, executive parking, and a lot of the upper spaces are photography studios and larger offices. With the densification of office kind of over the last 20 years, that use of space doesn't really work for Shutterfly, and that building has been, for the most part, abandoned for several years now. Here's that view again once the building's removed and the new canopy structure's added, and then we're keeping the materials in line with the existing materials: brick, glass, and stucco. Another view of the current lobby entry, and then what it looks like with the revisions and consolidation. Finally, one of the real impetuses to this project is the ability to park the site in a way that works for Shutterfly and any tenant that would be on this campus. And you'll see there was a report by NIOP which talks about really that need of close to 5 per thousand. City ordinance or zoning, I think, requires 4.2 per thousand. This you'll see with the consolidation, reduction of square footage on site, takes the current parking ratio from 2.8 to nearly 4.9 and above that zoning requirement. Here's a site plan which goes into, we actually have some reduction of parking because the executive parking on the west building is removed, and then there's added islands and green space in that easternmost parking lot, and we're taking out rock mulch and replacing that with more green, environmentally friendly landscape islands and trees. So this is kind of that final landscape plan where you can see additional trees on the islands and whatnot. So, and then finally, this is that lobby plan. There'll be a new set of doors out to the western side. Really no change to the building except for we'll have to reconstruct that western wall in addition where the building was demolished. And then finally, this just illustrates the three main materials: glass, brick, and stucco. And with that, I'll turn it over to the city team.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Highland. Any initial questions for architect? No. Thank you.
Oh, I haven't.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Mitty.
How long has Tempest owned the property?
Sorry, Mr. Highland. We had one question for you.
How long has Tempest owned the property for? And then how I guess, Shutterfly, how long have they been in there?
I'll let Brad Runsick with the Tempest team come up and answer that.
Okay.
Because he understands the real estate aspect.
Thank you, Terry. We're under contract to purchase, but we don't own it yet. Life Touch, I think, originally developed that as their headquarters back in 1997. I think they've been there ever since.
So it's currently owned by Shutterfly.
Touch. Yeah.
Okay.
Julie, we be doing the staff report today?
Yes, sir. So to build on the presentation that Mr. Helen shared with you, the request this evening is for a PUD concept review, PUD district review with waivers, and site plan review. There is, as he mentioned, a single waiver that is being requested as part of the PUD that is to address the impervious surface area. Currently, they have a waiver to allow 63% of the site to be impervious. With the reduction of the building and reestablishment of turf on that site, that would bring the impervious surface percentage down to 55. It still exceeds the 30% required by code, necessitating the waiver, but it is, as I said, a reduction on the ground of 8%. They are also making site improvements. As you might recall, the parking design standards were revised in 2016, 2017 to require parking lot islands every so far, as well as requiring landscaping within those islands. So they are making improvements to the parking lot to improve compliance with those standards, as Mr. Helen described. They are also coming into compliance with the parking. City code requires 4.2 stalls per 1,000 square feet of floor area. With the removal of the building, they would exceed that requirement at 4.9 stalls per 1,000. The building revisions needing to address the removal of the building exceed city code requirements for building materials and architecture, so there are no waivers requested as a part of that. And aside from that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions in your report.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions for the city? All right. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against this project, please do so now. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll motion to close the public hearing.
Motion
Second.
from Commissioner Marcos. Do I have a second to close the public hearing?
I'll second it.
Second for Commissioner Gooding. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Further discussion from anyone on the commission? Commissioner Gooding?
Chair, I see this as nothing but an improvement to an existing site. I'm in favor of it. I think it looks good, and it will enhance or improve what is already there, make it more compliant with our codes, and I'm supportive of the project.
Thank you, Commissioner Gooding.
Mr. Chair, I'd share that perspective.
Commissioner Kirk. Commissioner Meddy.
While there's some good coming out of this in general, it's also tough to basically be, undeveloping a site. I think my feelings around it are, typically, even given the times that we're in right now, economically speaking, this is a bit of an odd deal that someone would come and take down a perfectly good, relatively new office building. But if that's in the interest of the owner and the tenant, it's their prerogative. I think that more could be done to take then what we're now losing and make it an amenity for the building. It seems like that there's a small patio area being added, but it still felt like it is not fully taking advantage of maybe another amenity. I see right now on the current site plan, there is a sidewalk that runs along the back of the west wing. And if they were to leave that in place, it runs almost all the way up to Viking Drive. I think it would be interesting for them to leave that in place and allow a walking loop again, so people on their lunch break can walk around, and see, gardens and flowers and nature and all of that. Just something to make it again more of an amenity and not just demo it and plant grass or native landscaping. And then one other comment I did have is I see there's a sidewalk that basically runs from the westernmost parking spaces into the building entrance, and at this point it's so close to Viking Drive and the trail there. If you think about someone who is biking to work, it would be safer for them to be able to stay on the trail the entire time. And so I would request that sidewalk be extended all the way to Viking Drive to make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists to access the building.
Commissioner Stinkis?
Mr. Helen, I have a couple of questions. The site plan that's dated, I assume it's dated 6/10/19, is that correct? Signed off by Mark Salo.
Pardon?
The Samatech, this is the
Yep, the
master
original
plan.
survey.
Right. Just wondering, I see at the northwest corner of the property, there's a bench demarcated. Is there a plan to add more spaces for people to rest or benches along that pathway, by the way?
At this time, I don't believe so, but I mean, that certainly could be something considered. And I do think there is currently a connection from the back side of that lobby down to the trail, if I remember right. So, I mean, I do think that exists as well. But we haven't planned any amenities past that.
Okay, because I'm wondering, with Lake Smetana back there, giving people an opportunity to be able to gaze on nature during their lunch breaks or work breaks might be a positive thing to encourage people to sit.
Well, and I think one of the things is we want to make sure this happens for Shutterfly, and then they were talking about potentially some other improvements that they would think down the road. So, I mean, I think this was where we would start.
Okay, and then the other question, perhaps this is not material to your project, but that 2019 revision showed the approximate FEMA flood zone, and I'm wondering, is that cast in stone now, or is that a flexible
I would have to talk with our
demarcation?
civil engineer. I know that they were looking at that, and there was a wetland mitigation study done.
Right.
So I'd have to refer to that, but I do not know if that's cast in stone or not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Other comments from commissioners? Someone like to make a motion, or
Sure.
Commissioner Farr?
Yep, sorry, just to add my point, I like the idea about the city trail being looped around. That was added along Viking Drive, all the way along. I think that's going to continue further east to make that connection. I work in the area, and I think that's a sorely needed pedestrian connection, so glad to see that going in at this point in time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Commissioner Kirk.
move to recommend approval for a planned unit development concept review on 16.2 acres, planned unit development district review with waivers on 16.2 acres, and a site plan review on 16.2 acres based on plans stamped dated November 1, 2021, and the staff report dated November 8, 2021.
I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second it.
Second for Commissioner Gooding. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Would anyone like to abstain? All right. Good luck with your project moving forward. All right. Moving on, we have another public hearing this evening. This is for the Ellie. Request for a guide plan change from low-density residential and industrial flex to medium-high density residential on 6.4 acres. Planned unit development concept review on 6.4 acres. Planned unit development district review with waivers on 6.4 acres. Zoning change from R1-22 and industrial-2 to RM-2.5 on 6.4 acres. Preliminary plat of 7 parcels into 1 lot and 1 outlet on 6.4 acres. Will the proponent of the Ellie project please come forward? Good evening. If you could state your name and spell it for the record and tell us about your project, please.
Good evening, Commissioner staff. Scott Peterson, SCOTTPETERSON, representing United Properties, 651 Nicollet Avenue Mall, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Representing the developer of the project, United Properties is a 100-year-old real estate development firm based here in Minneapolis. We develop a variety of products, everything from multifamily, senior housing, industrial, and mixed-use developments. We have experience of successful completion of projects here in the city of Eden Prairie. Most recently, the Applewood Point project, directly south of the parcel that's in front of you this evening, as well as the C.H. Robinson headquarters. Myself, along with my team, which I'll introduce here briefly, spent the last 6 to 7 months here with staff, working on what you'll see in front of you here today. We're excited about the opportunity to present that this evening, and with that, I'd like to turn over a presentation that we put together to Matt Johnson with Dlr Architects.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Hello, I'm Matt Johnson, MATTJOHNSON. I'm with DLR Group, address 520 Nicollet Mall, Minneapolis, Minnesota 55402. And with me is Nathan Kay.
Same address, but NATHANKAYE.
And we're going to talk a bit about the alley, kind of give a high-level overview. Oop. There we go. So at a high-level piece, the site itself is existing 7 single-family homes, and we're consolidating them into a 6.4-acre site, where it can yield a 4-story building with underground parking, 239 units, 39 studios, 97 one-bedroom, 36 one-bedroom plus den, and 67 two-bedrooms. The site itself is parked for 404 stalls. 197 of those are underground. The remainder, 207, are actually on the surface itself. The site is developed with a courtyard, an open-air courtyard in the middle. For 2,000 square feet, it's our open and usable space. Within that courtyard, there's a variety of amenity for resident use, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The other big part of the project itself is at the intersection, the work at the intersection of Eden Prairie Road and Lincoln Lane. We're lining those intersection, the entries into the site to align with the road across the street, as well as a turn lanes being added northbound on Eden Prairie Road into our site to yield better and safer stacking. So the sustainable features of the site itself, we're able to retain 20 significant trees. We're also able to create 20 pocket parks, green roof, not pocket parks, but green roofs within the building and exist on the 3rd floor. So you can see those from the building looking out for residents. We have EV charging stations. We have stormwater recapture for the use of watering our raised garden beds for our culinary garden within the open garden area, open courtyard. And also, it's a dense project. Really, the density helps really allow us to do the affordable housing component to the project, as well as reduce urban sprawl. If you could scroll down, yep, and it does include the affordable units. Sorry. So that is the site itself. The context of the site, 6.4 acres. You can see the 7 single-family homes and existing Lincoln Lane. To the south is the new Applewood Point Senior Facility, which doesn't appear on this aerial, but it's multifamily housing below. Smith Coffee Shop to the south, trail along Eden Prairie Lane, and then industrial on the north and west side, or east side of the site itself. So really, this is a really good use for this land in terms of creating dense housing that's more in line with what's within the neighborhood now from these single-family homes. Now let Nathan talk about how we came to naming the project.
Yeah, the story behind the name is that it's an homage to the woman credited with the name of Eden Prairie. When she was traveling out to the west, right, we are in the west. In her book, Summer Rambles in the West, she wrote about the area being called the Garden of the Prairie Land. So for us, the Ellie represents a home within that garden, and it follows our design concept of having the architecture and the landscape be something that is derived from the existing context of Eden Prairie. And we'll touch on that as we go further into some of the design features.
So really just wanted to highlight the site itself. In terms of the 404 stalls, you can see the parking wraps are perimeter of the site. You can see the turn lane and blow up the turn lane on the right side from Eden Prairie Road going north. Turn lane into the site itself to facilitate stacking. This is hard to see, but we also move the intersection on the south side of the intersection down to align with the road across the street itself. As you enter the site, you can kind of see, if you, Julie, scroll up just a little bit. There you go, perfect. As you come into the site, the garage opening is to the left. I don't think there's a pointer here, but if you look on the west side of the building, you see the cut through on the left image. You see the garage access underneath to the building itself. And then the front door of the building, if you would, in terms of office and amenity space on the south side, right at that area with the visitor parking, and then the courtyard directly adjacent to it in the middle of the building itself. So this is a view of that courtyard space, turn the green space that the building looks onto. Within this area, we'll have the pool, bocce ball, pickleball, culinary garden beds, which are these raised garden beds, so the tenants can actually have their own garden within the campus itself. It does have a children's play area with chill-out appropriate playground equipment within, grass areas, as well as fire pit and patio space itself. It's really trying to create this, really helping create that community within the residence itself. I'll let Nathan talk about the architecture.
For the exterior palette, what you see in front of you is just all of the context we pulled from. These are just a sample of the images. We looked at everything from the retaining walls across the street to some of the existing public buildings, to future projects, to recent projects, and even bottom right corner is the historic Smith Coffee House that's adjacent to us. So our goal is to complement, pay respect, blend in to this whole palette. So take a little snapshot of all the stone bases and how they broke up massing. And in the next page, we'll show you what we chose for ours. So along the base of the building, we chose this, it's called a Tuscan walnut ledge stone. And it's got a rich hue of reds and browns and darks. And so it ties into the historical red brick next door. It ties into some of the more browner natural colors of Eden Prairie. And it ties into that stone base element, the motif that you see in a multi-story project. Above that, we chose 3 different fiber cement panels to accent these volumes. And first off, we chose multiple ones because it helps us one layer of a strategy to break up these volumes more. So each of these pitched roof volumes has a different fiber cement panel. Another reason why we chose this specific fiber cement is each one has like a little texture when you get up close. So because we have balconies and because people will be, next to these, there is that like tactile, they don't just look like plastic generic panels. They have some character to them, which is important for a home. And then the accent material to the right, we have at the ground floor a Corten weathered steel and concrete. And those are chosen because they do develop more character over time. And it is, again, a very tactile experience. They're focused more on the entry areas. So the age over the time, the homes get character. It's kind of more associated with a home design element than a commercial design element. And then we have a dark accent material. In this case, it's fiber cement lap siding along with the copings at the top will be black. And we use this dark accent materials as strategy in addition to the different color fiber cement. It's another strategy to help break up the facade, right? So common trick, when you want to look slimmer, you wear like a dark suit or something, right? Do the same thing with buildings. We want it to feel like a smaller building. We give it a dark facade to kind of reduce its size, optical illusion a little bit. So it further helps to break up the mass of this building. I think I covered it. That's all. Yeah, okay.
And then just some additional images of the building itself, and then you can kind of see those elements that Nathan was talking about in terms of materiality or coloration of them. The other important feature is the green roof itself, and again, to help reduce the amount of pervious space within the campus itself. We chose to put those on the third floor, which is a reduction of units itself, but the nice thing about that it really allows the tenants to actually see and witness the green roof itself. And so in some ways, this becomes a learning lab. So not only do we have a green roof and how a green roof works, but also we have the courtyard space with the capture rainwater for watering gardens. So it's really trying to use these sustainability moves as a way to help educate and share with those that live here what green design, sustainable design is all about and the opportunities there for it. The remainder of the roof is being retained for future PV array, as possible, as feasible. And you begin to see how really the site itself lays out with our plantings in terms of the bushes and shrubs and trees, really trying to get as much green space back into the campus, yet maintain a dense housing development so we can provide that affordable component. And that is overall summary. Those we can talk about later if needed.
Great. Thank you. Initial questions for Mr. Johnson or Mr. Kane? Commissioner Reddy.
What, I guess, level of apartments are you going for here in terms of what kind of building is your competitive set? I know we've had some other newer Eden Prairie developments, but I'm just curious what do you see as comparable that you're going to be competing with, and or what are the rental rates that you're planning to charge here?
Yeah, I'll let Scott answer that one.
So in regards to it's a new build construction type Class A, I would argue. Our goal is to do attainable rents is kind of our market there, if I had to kind of pinhole it somewhere in there. Average rents for here are going to be anywhere between probably $1.70 all the way up to probably $2.34. Average size square foot units probably anywhere between 575 up to probably 1,200, with an average coming in around probably 850 a square foot there.
I guess this is a question, but also sort of a comment. I noticed you had really great outdoor amenities. You have everything you could think of or want out there in this great middle area. But when I was looking at the floor plans, it seemed like the indoor amenities were really quite small. And then when you compare that to the scale of the number of units here, it seemed like there was basically, aside from some leasing offices and whatnot, a single community room. So just kind of curious what kind of positioning you felt there. And it seems, since the outdoor amenities are only really available maybe 6 months out of the year, how do you balance that? It seemed like it was a little short on, or actually quite a bit short on, indoor amenity space.
Yeah, understood. We've done extensive research actually on the amenity package to go in here. Frankly, in our opinion, the amenities have been overbuilt, and that's reflected in increased pricing, right? So you'll go to some places that have golf simulators, TV rooms, theater rooms, and that's just not the market we're trying to hit here. And if we try to do that, our rent grows above there. So if you look at the demographics that we're targeting, I think Eden Prairie is scheduled to grow 9% for the age group of 22 to 44 between now and 2026. That's our target market from an average income, I believe, of about $90,000 to about $110,000. So in order to hit that target market, we're really trying to deliver a new, clean development that, to your point, the interior amenities are going to be a fitness room, a yoga studio, heated parking, in-unit washer and dryer. Those are all kind of things that drive that value, but don't necessarily drive the price increase. We do have an on-site leasing, and then the bulk of that is exterior type amenities. And frankly, we think there's better value turning over almost a 1 acre green facility to these tenants than it is putting in, some of these amenities that maybe don't meet everyone's needs, like a golf simulator and those sort of things.
Okay, thank you.
I think Commissioner Farr, Commissioner Taylor, then Commissioner Sanctus.
Thanks, Chair. Couple quick questions. First of all, I really appreciate the nice large windows on the facade. I think that's going to really help with daylighting inside the units. It's a really noticeable feature on the building. That's great. And also the playful balcony placements on the facade, I think add some interest instead of all lining them up like soldiers. Going into some material selections, I didn't see anything in here about the type of retaining walls that you're proposing. I did hear you say, Nathan, something about matching something across the street. I think that was just a small, short, small format retaining wall, like a Keystone brand or something like that. You have some pretty tall, long walls, and I'm hoping those are going to be the larger format cast concrete, maybe with a textured face, but I don't want to pin you down to that. I'm hoping you'll agree with that.
Yeah, we're looking at segmented retaining walls, so the larger blocks, not the big concrete blocks, but the segmented, like Keystone style type block for the retaining wall.
Even on your really tall ones, those engineered walls you're going to have back there?
You know, man, I think so. I think that's the intent through there.
I'll urge you to reconsider and
Okay.
just maybe ruminate on that with your civil engineer, and for long-term durability and performance, that'd be great. There was a letter attached on our staff report from the industrial neighbor to the northeast of you. Had some concerns about the adjacency of this zone as it relates to your housing with noise, things like that may be coming from a zone like light industrial. Have you had a chance to review that concern and think about that with your apartment so close?
Yeah, as we spoke with our team internally, as long as they're complying with the city noise ordinance as it is, they really shouldn't perceive any problem with our facility. One of the benefits we have in terms of distance from that noise, in terms of, I don't know what our distance is, 350 feet or so from. Yeah, so the sound level will drop. So again, as long as they're complying with sound ordinance, as it gets to our building, we're far enough away that decibel drop should be helpful.
Okay, so you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, one more item and then I'll give up the mic. Could you talk a little bit more about those pocket green roofs that you have? I think you said on the third floor. I thought they were on fourth floor, but they're visible through the hallways to the residents. Are the residents allowed to go out on there? And I have a number of questions about that. You can answer them all at once. Do you know the type of green roof yet? I know there's extensive and intensive roofs. Has to do with the depth and the media and the water volume goals that you're trying to achieve with your basic premise of reducing the water leaving the site and helping with sustainability. So I didn't know how far you got, and maybe you didn't, with the engineering of that green roof as it relates to your wood frame construction, holding up saturated soils, and how you're going to achieve those goals.
Yeah, so it's not fully designed yet. In terms of I don't know if Julie can bring back that image from that rendering. I don't know if that's easy. So from each of the elevator staircases, you can look out and there'll be full glass windows onto that green roof itself.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so you can kind of begin to see how you can see those. And some from the adjacent units, or that adjacent unit will have a window into that green roof as well to help appreciate the garden itself. As we design, we want as much retention as we can for stormwater. That's not fully designed yet. We don't anticipate utilizing them as amenity green roof space in terms of walking out onto. These are more of a visual garden from the inside, again, to allow them to be easily maintainable in that sense, in terms of not being walked on or things of that nature. So to play in more of an intensive type green roof system is what we're hoping to achieve. But as we develop the building and the structure, and we just want to be as efficient as we can with the assembly itself and maximize our storage as well, or water storage, stormwater storage.
Good. All right. Those are the key points that I wanted to hear about. That.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you, Commissioner. So one of my questions was around the green roof, and it sounds like that's not going to be kind of accessible to the residents. Because my other question was going to be, if it is, the height of the edges, or whoever's going to go out and work around and do landscape there on the green roof, how high would the ledges or the edges of the roof be to prevent someone from falling off and so on?
Yeah, so it's not an occupiable roof. And so the maintenance is very minimal at best in terms of, we haven't really talked about how we access that roof for maintenance, but you could get to it from a lift on the outside of the building to get up to it. Again, the idea is for it to be a visual relief versus an occupiable green space.
Okay.
And so the whole idea is if it was up on the fourth floor, nobody gets to appreciate the qualities of a green roof. And so by doing this, allows us to bring it down as a visual element for the residents. Again, it's a teaching garden as well in terms of what this green roof landscape could be, can be. And it even allows the residents to come together, and if they want to modify it, if you would, in terms of change the plantings, they could do something like that over time. Again, it's intended to be a community type project as well.
Okay. My second question is around, there was something in the documents that mentioned some fuel tanks needed to be removed. Are those underground fuel tanks?
Yeah,
or?
so some of the existing homes have these fuel tanks, the single-family homes. So part of our reclamation of the site is to remove all that stuff out of there and prepare it for our building. So we don't want that there either.
Right.
But it's the reality of that site and those age of those homes.
Okay.
Commissioner DeSanctis?
I appreciate your enumeration of the sustainable components.
Yeah.
Bravo. One question I have is with respect to point 2, preservation of 20 significant trees. My inspection of the site revealed more than several healthy young white pines or Scots pines on the south side of Lincoln Lane toward the end of the not quite to the cul-de-sac. Does your preservation effort include those white pines?
I don't know specifically. I don't think so. Just because of the amount of grading you have to do across that site, we're able to retain things around the perimeter of the building, along the boulevard, if you would, and the parking lane. But as you get closer to the building, there's so much earthwork that has to happen within there. The 20 was the best we could in terms of saving the significant trees.
Just wondering, in terms of your effort to restore caliber inches, I'm wondering if you could give consideration to planting some white pines.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely review it with the development team, definitely. They're a nice tree.
Thank you.
We are adding, just as another side, we are adding more trees to the south, to Applewood Point area, again, to increase the overall screening between our two buildings themselves. Are more evergreen species, so it's not a white pine, but it is an evergreen to provide cover or screen throughout the winter months as well.
Are there, to your knowledge, any habitats or ecosystems that would be encroached upon in your development?
From our investigation, there are none.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gooding?
Yes, I want to follow up a little bit on one of Ed Farr's questions. In talking about the retaining wall and the letter from the business owners on that side, in addition to sound, they talked about light pollution. And your walls and spots are going to be high enough that you're going to have to do some form of a railing on top to comply with code. And it might be not a bad idea to make that railing a fence.
Okay.
And do it along the whole length of those parking lots to minimize any light pollution moving into those other areas. From the headlights at night, your cars are going to park straight ahead. The lights are going to be out there. Gives you a good opportunity to clear up some of the comments we've received.
Sure.
And you've got to build something on top of the retaining wall, at least in spots. It varies in height, but you're going to have to put a railing in.
We'll certainly continue to investigate that. We've got planting berm along there as well.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of confirm how high that goes for headlight obscurance as well. But the whole idea is to get it as vegetated as possible through there. Yeah. If it makes some sense to have a shorter fence, maybe that makes some sense as well to help kind of blend everything.
It might address that issue. The other one, I'd like you to expand a little bit on the bone you threw out about the solar on the roof. It's how serious is that for the future?
Well, I mean, we're getting to PV ready. It all comes down to dollars and cents at the end of the day in terms of what we can afford to do and still get the project to be economically viable with affordable units that are there. Yeah. And so it's something that I think would be a lifelong goal for the project is to continue to add as appropriate and as grants can be had. So I think we're talking seriously about it. We haven't committed to a number of arrays yet, but it's a PV ready building, if you would, in terms of how to kind of, I wouldn't say plug and play, but certainly install and get it going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Are there initial questions for the developer?
I have one that's
Commissioner
a little
Higgins.
harder for me to reach, but maybe you can help me. I was concerned and still would like some education on the fact that you're going to use a wood structure for the building, and
Yep.
not metal, not steel. And that will save you some costs, obviously. But my concern was, what about the lifespan of that building? The effect of not having that kind of higher grade construction on the building for that size of a
Sure,
operation.
sure. Well, wood is one of the oldest building materials around.
I know.
And
The houses that are there that have been there since the 50s, and they're still, going. But my concern was with the high use of that kind of a facility, do you have more things that need to be attended to going into the future then?
Well, certainly one of the challenges is using lumber. As it shrinks, buildings move around a bit. So we design for that reaction. So it minimize the amount of cracking or things that may occur over time. But still, wood construction is one of the oldest materials used. It's a very durable material. It's a very resilient material. It's embedded carbon. It's a very sustainable material. So I think it's a quality product. But it also is a very affordable product. It's a sustainable, renewable material that we use often, especially with its typology, because it is the most affordable and economical material, which then allows us to hit these affordable goals that we have for the project, in terms of affordable unit goals for the project.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sanctus.
I have another question unrelated to the trees. You're proposing, though, as part of the upgrade and improvement of the intersection with Eden Prairie Road, adding a right turn lane to prevent stacking. How will that work with the existing sidewalk and rights of way?
Yeah, so the sidewalk and trail will align along the new turn lane itself. So it'll come onto that, we'll call it the boulevard, if you will, between our building and the street itself. So it'll be a continuation. So all that will continue through. The turn lane will come in, the sidewalk will follow that, and realign across the intersection and back to the sidewalk system, and trail system.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, looking at the floor plan, it looks like and maybe this is because of the age demographics that you're targeting, the max occupancy is a 2-bedroom?
2-bedroom units, yeah.
What limited you from stopping at 2? Why not adding some 3-bedroom units?
Market analysis, I'm assuming.
Yeah, correct. When you look at the demographic that we're pursuing, and then you blend that across kind of the average home value that's increasing around Eden Prairie, that's kind of the tipping point we see is people that need a 3-bedroom are typically going to a home purchase versus people that are able to stay in a 1, a 2, or a studio type component. That's what led us to our unit mix as is.
Okay, thank you.
Not seeing any other questions, maybe we'll go to the city staff report. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
Julie, will you be taking us through that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the requests tonight are several-fold. First of all, there's a request for a guide plan change from low-density residential and industrial to medium-high density residential. That proposed land use category allows for a density of 14 to 40 units per acre, and this project comes in at about 37 units per acre, so it is consistent with that land use category. Along with that is a zoning change requested from the R1 22 and I2 zoning districts to an RM 2.5 zoning district, along with PUD concept review and PUD with waivers. As well, they are also requesting a preliminary plat to combine those 7 parcels and the potentially vacated right-of-way of Lincoln Lane into 1 lot and 1 outlot. And then, of course, a site plan review to address the performance standards and the specifics of the building proposed. There are several waivers that are requested as part of the PUD proposal. The first waiver, of course, is the density that I discussed earlier. As I said, it is consistent with the requested re-guiding. They're also asking for a waiver to the building height. There are portions of the building that do extend beyond the city code requirement height. They exceed that by, as I recall, about 6 feet or so. So that waiver is requested. From a parking standpoint, they are just a little bit short on the parking that is proposed, so staff has analyzed that against other development projects. As you recall, the city just recently redid its parking requirements for efficiencies and studio apartments, so that is accounted for as a part of this project. So parking is addressed not only in the number of parking stalls provided, but as you'll recall, code requires half of all of the parking stalls to be covered. So they're requesting a waiver from that as well. They're proposing 49% of the parking stalls to be covered rather than the 50% required by code. From a landscaping perspective, they are requesting a landscaping waiver as well. By code, there are 871 caliper inches of landscaping required. By the way code requires landscaping to be calculated, they are providing 448 caliper inches. Because there are certain calculations outlined in code, for instance, only 25% of the shrubs and planting beds can be counted. If we were able to count all of those caliper inches that are actually proposed on site, they are providing 997 caliper inches. So as you'll recall, some of you will recall, about 5 years ago we redid our landscaping requirements. So staff is continuing to monitor those and provide some calculations about how many caliper inches are actually provided on site, so we can understand kind of what it feels like to the consumer or the residents on site and compare that to how that is actually meeting the code requirements. So you'll see more information coming forward on that in the future because that is something that we're monitoring. But in this case, they are requesting a waiver to the landscaping requirements. And the last waiver that I wanted to highlight is the impervious surface area percentage. As we talked about with the last project, code requires the 30% maximum. They are proposing about 48% of the site as impervious surface. Now, in this particular case, the entire lot is not within the shoreland area. The shoreland area is what requires the impervious surface maximum. Only a portion of the site is within the shoreland area. However, because it is being platted as one large lot, it applies to the entire parcel. So I just wanted to share that information with you as well. So staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions outlined in your staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Thank you, Julie. Questions for the city?
I have some.
Commissioner Meddy?
Do you know what the density is of the overall PUD just to the south? That was the Applewood Point and the Common Bond.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the overall density for Smith Village is 23 units per acre. However, if you take a look at just the Applewood Point project, that has a density of nearly 26 units per acre, and Trail Point Ridge on its own is almost 29 units per acre.
What is the zoning then also at that site? Was that RM 2.5 as well?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that's correct. It's RM 2.5 with a PUD.
Can you also remind me, because I think we had a meeting about this and I have terrible memory, but we talked about the usable open space requirement, which was like 650 a unit. Did we actually pass that and now it's only 150 a unit? And now they're, and can you remind me what they're at currently? I think it's, well, I could probably find it here.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Meddy, his memory serves her better than she recalls because we did approve that code amendment that allowed for 150 square feet of usable open space per unit. And I'm just trying to flip through my memo here to find this. This project is actually meeting that and exceeding it by providing 192 square feet of usable open space per unit.
So my question on that, because I think it had mentioned that calculation of 192 include the allowable indoor usable open space. Is our definition of the 150 per unit inherently allow the indoor to be included in that calculation? Or is that not specifically spelled out in the ordinance?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the way usable open space is defined, it is indoor and outdoor amenities, so both can be included in that.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, hopefully my last question. I noticed along the southern edge and eastern edge, there are, what appears to be almost 100 stalls in a row, quite a few. I don't know the wording of our landscaping island requirements well enough, something like every 20 stalls or something, but this is like the longest rows of parking I've ever seen uninterrupted. So how does this not require those parking islands and breaks within the rows of parking?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Meddy is correct. That code does say that after 20 parking stalls, there should be an island. However, that provision does not apply to single row parking.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Julie?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Fart.
can I get clarification about this off-site sanitary sewer connection? Just for the record, one of the sheets of civil plans shows a very long, deep sanitary sewer connection from this site running eastward towards another development on Fuller Road, I believe, at the cul-de-sac there, through private property. And I just want to make sure everybody's clear as to what that's all about.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, we've been working with the development team on this for a while because the initial submittals had some very deep sewer adjacent to the building and kind of wrapping around the north side. So recently we came up with a plan to extend that out to the outlot there and then easterly toward Fuller Road. There is an existing 30-foot easement along the north property line of that vacant property to the east. So, and the applicant is proposing to directionally drill that through a large portion of that. So they should be able to easily accommodate that. There may be some temporary easement potentially that they may need, but it's plenty wide for that corridor or for that utility.
Thanks for that summary. So with the directional boring, you'll probably minimize tree loss as well. And the other sanitary sewer connection off that east property line is just going to be abandoned in place?
The one that goes to the east?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be abandoned it'll just be, at this point, it won't be abandoned, it'll just be not used. But when that property develops, I'd assume it would be removed at that time or filled. But there will be some, I think there's a manhole structure right there, so that'll be plugged at some point at that location.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then because of that sanitary sewer running from this site, starting at the north and heading east, then that explains the minor discrepancy they have in their plans with the landscaping plans. There are 3 significant trees that they touted as being saved up there in that northern area, and those are going away. On the demo plan that shows the trees being X'd out because of this sanitary sewer construction, the landscape plans just haven't caught up to that. So is it fair to say that then they'll recalculate the tree computations based upon the additional loss of trees?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, one of the recommendations that is made by staff speaks directly to Commissioner Farr's point. Some of the plans just haven't caught up with some of the latest revisions, so there is a requirement that all plans be updated prior to City Council review, and those calculations will be reworked prior to the City Council review.
Thanks, Julie. Appreciate that. Last but not least, it seems to be regarding the 30% shoreland setback waiver that they're asking for, and they're 48% on this and half the sites in this zone and the other half isn't. It seems like the stormwater plans are very well done. They are capturing and infiltrating as much water as I've seen on just about any other site, and they have a lot of green roofs and those strategies. So my take is that it's above satisfactory. Is there any reason to believe that the Mitchell Lake concern about the shoreland setback would be negatively impacted?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the
We do have a few comments that we've provided to the developer regarding some of this impervious or pervious pavement that they're putting in, which is admirable, that they're putting all the stalls permeable. But some of those, we've asked them to look at where that water is coming from. So not directing water into that area, particularly in areas where that's on top of the retaining walls. So obviously we don't want to infiltrate water where the retaining walls, at least a significant amount of water. So they'll have to review that and look at that a little bit more. But overall, yes, they're doing a lot on site regarding stormwater development or stormwater treatment.
Management. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Other questions for the city? All right, we will go to the public hearing portion. Would someone like to? Sure. Good evening. If you could come up and state your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Donald Hanson, and I don't need me to spell it, but I have a presentation about
you
this.
You have a present. This
Yes,
hard copy. Okay.
yes, this
All right.
hard copy.
So the commission has all received the hard copy presentation. So if you could take us through your presentation, and it
Yes.
seems similar to one you gave to us for a prior development. So if you could do us a favor and hit the highlights and tell us what's pertinent to LE.
Well, let's see. All right. So the first part. So basically, I've been a college professor. And so this is probably a different kind of presentation because I'm talking about color science and theory. And so I'm going to talk about my background in color science. The second thing is I live a crosswalk away from this site, so I'm right there. I have a precedent in that the City Council did order me to collaborate with architects on Smith Village, which is right down the street. I'm going to define the word Eden, the word Prairie, Eden Prairie for natural beauty and building color schemes. My view is the proposed color scheme for LA does not represent either the neighborhood of Eden Prairie, either my neighborhood or Eden Prairie. And so I'm going to show photographs showing color schemes that conform to Eden Prairie and photographs that conform to the neighborhood. So my background in color science, now I'm a neighbor. Who am I? I'm a neighbor who is concerned about architect planning of color scheme for buildings do not represent either my neighborhood or Eden Prairie. Now, my experience, I was a lecturer in architecture at the University of Illinois, and I taught color science during that time. I'm a college professor, as I said. I taught at 5 universities. I'm a professional engineer licensed in Minnesota. I was the solar PV design manager for IPS Solar for 5 years, and I'm a licensed master electrician in Minnesota. So I'll skip over that part. Now, where is my house? My house is a crosswalk away from this project. So if you look here, my home is circled there on the left. There's the proposed development on the right, and you can see I've circled the crosswalk there. So I have a very, very tight interest in this project. Now, there is a precedent for me. I should have said that I'm wanting to request to provide advice to the architects on the color for this. The City Council did order me to collaborate directly with the architects on Smith's Village color. So I've been through this before. This is an article describing my work, and basically the result was the council asked developers and Donald Hanson to reconsider the development's color palette. And so anyway, I'll go on. So let's look at the words Eden Prairie, and natural beauty for color scheme selection. Now, I'll be using the word natural beauty over and over again. Now, this is a set of words that I used in order so that I can talk about this easily, and because I think Eden Prairie is a natural beauty place. Now, this is the Eden Prairie's vision statement. This is directly at the front door over the plaque over the front desk at City Hall. So Eden Prairie is a vibrant city characterized by the thoughtful integration of natural beauty and physical development that creates a highly desirable place for its residences and businesses. And so notice there the vision statement says natural beauty right there. And so the name of my presentation before the City Council on November 13th, 2018 about Smith Village was called Natural Beauty. Now here is the definition of Eden. If you go to the reference there on the bottom of the slide, Eden is a place of pristine or abundant natural beauty. Prairie is a cover of tall grasses. Eden Prairie represents the natural beauty of large areas of grassland. So my view is that to conform with the natural beauty of Eden Prairie and to conform with my neighborhood, building color schemes must be chosen to conform with the idea of natural beauty of a pristine prairie. So here's the former work. At the City Council meeting on November 13th, 1918, I made this presentation called Natural Beauty. In this presentation, I discuss how to recognize natural beauty. Now, natural beauty is a term which I made up to describe this, and to give design rules for architects to create buildings with natural beauty color schemes. Now, I've given hard copies to folks. I've also, I think I've emailed the presentation that I made on natural beauty in 2018. Now, what is natural beauty? My presentation before the City Council gives all the design rules for a natural beauty building. I taught natural beauty design rules for architecture students 45 years ago. It's not a new thing. I've used the word natural beauty just to clarify what it is, and not that it's something other people use. Two of the design rules for natural beauty buildings are: one, to paint the building a complementary color to the blue sky, and two, to enforce uniformity on the painted building when looking left to right. Therefore, a natural beauty building has one or two complementary colors to the sky which are uniform when looking left to right. Such a building appears to sparkle from the interaction between the sky color and the building color. The building color is chosen to be complementary color to the sky. Now notice down below from Smithsonian Magazine, complementary colors seem to soothe and balance since they simultaneously stimulate different parts of the eye. And so that's why these sparkle, and that's where you get the natural beauty from. So at Applewood Point fits both the neighborhood, my neighborhood, and Eden Prairie. Applewood Point has a natural beauty color scheme. It is directly adjacent to the proposed site. Now, a term that I use sometimes is a building is like an actor on a stage. If you show up on stage and your costume is wrong, anybody will look at your costume. And I sure don't want to look at a bad costume. Okay. So the present design, anyway, I believe, this is my opinion. The present design draws unnatural attention to itself. It is important that a building is natural beauty because it does not draw unnatural attention to itself. Natural beauty is in harmony with nature, my neighborhood in Eden Prairie. My view is the proposed color scheme for LA does not represent, I already said that. So I'm requesting basically here to provide advice to the architects on this color scheme. Now, what are my qualifications? I am perhaps the person who lives closest to this new building. I live a crosswalk away from it. I've lived in Eden Prairie for 20 years.
Dr. Hanson?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure we can get to discussion and everyone that wants to speak. I think you covered your
Okay.
qualifications
Well,
already.
anyway, I have these qualifications. So here's photographs showing the color schemes that conform to Eden Prairie. And these are light yellow and light brown. So here is a picture I took. This is across from the transit station in Purgatory Park. And the yellow there of the prairie and the blue sky are complementary colors. So that's why that looks good. And they don't vary in the horizontal direction as you look left to right. Now here, the designer of Eden Prairie Water Tower uses natural beauty colors. So what about the earth beneath our feet? So you can see in there that this is the color of the earth, and it's very close to Chaska brick color. So Chaska brick is a complementary color. So if you calculate the complementary color to Chaska brick, it's a blue sky color. And again, it sparkles and looks beautiful. So if you build a building out of Chaska brick, and you can go over to Chaska and see a lot of buildings like that, they dazzle, sparkle, and they're alive. So conclusions about Eden Prairie color, well, I've already said them, so if we're well, here's photographs of buildings in the neighborhood that I live in. So I'll just quickly say there's 4 buildings. The closest to Ellie are natural beauty buildings. There's a nursing home, that's natural beauty. There's Applewood Point, which is natural beauty. My home is natural beauty, and the Dairy Queen is natural beauty. And so to conform with my neighborhood, Ellie should also have a natural beauty color scheme. Now this shows my home on the bottom, and at the nursing home, Elim Shores up there on the top. And you see the crosswalk there, that's where I live, directly across, and Ellie is right on the right there. So here are the natural beauty color schemes in my neighborhood. So I'm basically giving you the standard for the buildings in the neighborhood. Elim Shores is natural beauty. My home is natural beauty. Dairy Queen is natural beauty. Applewood Point is natural beauty. So my belief is Ellie should have a natural beauty color scheme to fit in the neighborhood. So here's Elim Shores. So light yellow, light brown, sparkles in the blue sky, natural beauty. Here is Applewood Point. Natural beauty, light yellow, light brown. If you go there on a day with blue sky, it just sparkles. Here are residents working in the garden. So the residents obviously feel, if they're working in the garden, they feel that they're in a naturally beautiful environment. Here's the Dairy Queen. That's a natural beauty color scheme. And here's my home. That's a natural beauty color scheme. So I'll skip over these conclusions. You can read them in there. But basically the point is, the very last one, once the building is under construction, it is too late to make changes and give input about the color scheme, or input about the color scheme must be provided during the design stage. That is the reason for my request. I do not end up with an eyesore that I have to, right across the street from me, that I have to look at for the rest of my life. I want to have a beautiful, naturally beautiful building that fits my neighborhood and fits Eden Prairie. And so I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all the work you do, because I was going to say that first, but you interrupted me. But anyway, I know how hard what you do is, and so I admire that. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening. If you could state your name and spell for the record. And
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Thieroff, Markthieroff. I'm with the Siegel Brill Law Firm in Minneapolis, and I'm here this evening representing the Birchwood Labs property owners, the owners of the 2 properties that we talked about earlier to the east and north of the site. You have a letter from us in your packet. I'm not going to go over the letter again. There were just 2 points that I wanted to hit on very briefly relating to items that came up in the discussion earlier. And this is the screening issue and the fencing issue. And I want to be clear that those are not the same issue. The fencing issue to us relates to the fact that we have a approximately 3-acre parcel of undeveloped land immediately east of this development site, and we're bringing in 400 plus residents to a site that has up until now had 7 single-family homes. It's going to be a lot of people there. We're certainly not opposed to multifamily development on the property, but we are quite concerned about people migrating onto the property that's unsupervised. It's wooded. You're going to have families living in these apartments, children and so forth, and it could be a natural, attractive place for kids to go. The developer is proposing fencing along the north side in relation to the proposed dog run. We'd really like to see that fencing continue down along the east side just to keep things separate in that sense. There's nothing currently on that 3-acre parcel, and we're just concerned about it being an attractive place for young people to go. The screening issue is a different issue, and this relates to the parking. The developer has proposed configuring the parking so they externalize all of the parking of the car light. All of the parking stalls, you'll notice, are aimed outward. In one location, they have suggested putting up arbor vitae, which would actually provide effective screening, and coincidentally, it's to a property that they own. We don't know what's going to happen on that 3-acre parcel next door, but now is our opportunity to ask you to keep that in mind. With the grade difference here, all of those parking stalls on the east side of the lot will be aimed outward, the headlights, and in some places at a second-story window elevation as to that parcel to the east. They have screening proposed, but trees, maple trees and so forth, obviously don't screen until about the second-story level because you just have trunks. So we'd really like to see a more effective screening along the shared boundary between the two properties. We recognize it may not necessarily be required, but we understand the developer is here asking for a PUD approval, and I think that gives you the flexibility in that trading process of a PUD to suggest some things that we would like to see. It seemed like there was one other point I wanted to make. Escapes me. Thank you.
Thank you. What else would like to come forward? Good evening. If you could state your name and spell for the record, please.
Sure. Scott Malmsten, Malmsten, and I'm one of the 7 Lincoln Lane property owners. And if I can just get some of the other people to stand up that are also here from Lincoln Lane to just kind of show the support. So first of all, United Properties is, we've worked with them for quite a while, and we're very appreciative of how well they've worked with us. And we feel that the Applewood project that they put together, Applewood Point, is a very good project, and it does have a good color scheme, and they take everything into consideration and worked well with Eden Prairie in the past, as well as other community members. And I feel that they will do the same when they work with the Eli project, and I think that will carry through. And we are very supportive of United Properties doing this project, and I'm basing it on the enthusiasm I've kind of heard earlier, that I think this will be a very successful project. That's it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward? Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, everybody.
Same drill, if you would state your name and spell for the record,
Absolutely.
please.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Petrie, Elizabeth with a Z, Petrie, Petry. And I wonder, is there an image of the intersection that, from one of the presentations we could have up, that would be helpful
I
to
think
me?
Julie could pull that up again.
Otherwise, I know you all have it on your printout. So I'm a resident of the Townhome Association that is directly across from the entry point that we're talking about. which is Timberlake Drive. And our association, another association, as well as multiple single-family homes, all have that intersection as our one point of egress from our neighborhood. It's very, very concerning to me to see that another significantly high-density development is being added into the stretch on Eden Prairie Road when just 2 doors down, we've just had one put in, as well as on our side of Eden Prairie Road with some additional townhomes. My main concern is about the impact on traffic density. So if you'll bear with me for a moment, imagine you're on your way to work and you're going out your one point and you're at your stoplight, and now you know that there's another 81 vehicles likely to egress from across from you, and you're going to have to be delayed even more. Already we see an impact from the building that has been done in the last year and a half. So I don't know if a traffic study has been done regarding existing traffic, not what their additional burden would be, but what's present at that intersection. And there is not a added lane for turning right or left. You know, you come to the stoplight and you're stuck 2 lanes. And even if you go left towards the main intersection of Highway 5 and 4, you have 2 more lights. So the burden gets added to that. My other significant concern is that since we're looking at apartments where there are likely to be children, is school bus stop. So that delays everything again twice a day, and for safety issues, because that is kind of a busy road. Next, I'm concerned about the light, not just the light from the vehicles, which I've heard several people talk about shining out. They're going to be directly in our eyes as we approach the intersection, plus they shine into our neighborhood. But as concerning to me are the 20-foot light poles. Even if they shine down, you can't tell me that with that much exterior parking, we're not going to have a significant increase in light pollution in that area, and really a big change. I think when I hear words like, we've designed it to break up the mass of the building, where I see that the density increases, it looks to me double almost. And, you know, we're looking at 17.4 units per acre to 37 per acre. That's a significant doubling. I'm also looking at the fact that we have almost 200 people parking outside. What is it we have? I don't know the exact number, I apologize. 207 parking places. So think of all the people coming and going. Would you want to have that half a block from your house and the noise and the added? So I don't know. I appreciate the fact that they have taken a real look at being sustainable in how they've chosen the layout and the building. I know how important that is. But I'm also concerned just about the reality of, if they're keeping 20 significant trees, how many are they getting rid of? And the benefit that trees bring, and the fact that this site does not support them replacing the trees that they're taking out. But where I see on page 7, number 5, since the planting of trees is limited on the site, the proposed plan includes far more shrubs and planting beds than code allows to replace caliper inches. That says to me, more headlights shining my way. And as I exit my neighborhood, you know, less than half a block away, I'm going to be staring at retaining wall, parked cars, and a extra tall building that's broken up visually because of its mass. I do disagree with what our respected gentleman from United Properties said, which is, I do not think that this is in line with what's in the neighborhood. I do not think it is. I'm concerned a little bit about adding that many more homes of people who are not necessarily invested in maintaining, as a private homeowner might, the property. I wonder, what will it look like in 5 years? I wonder, is it going to affect crime, people walking by our house, which is one way that they would get most directly to the park? versus going 2 blocks down and out of their way. And I'm not seeing something that really addresses those concerns for the neighborhood. If you add 1,267 anticipated daily new site trips in and out to one intersection, that's an awful lot. And when it floods in heavy rains, that intersection floods already. So now we're looking at adding a huge building and taking away that ability for the earth to soak some of that down at that intersection and that stretch of Eden Prairie Road that's problematic. So I just really appreciate you taking the time to consider the residents who are already there, who have been there for a long time, who have already a stake in this, and how we might feel about it. I know some of our board members wanted to be here, but our board meeting is concurrent with this meeting, so I just hope that I've been able to represent for our community, and if there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beach. Would anybody else like to come forward? Yes. Good evening. If you could state your name and spell it for the record, please.
Hello, Jonathan Smith, Jonathan Smith, Smith. For one, I'm fully supportive of the waivers and the project in general. I am a current renter of Eden Prairie and involved in the community, and adopt storm drains and clean up my community and things like that. My couple of small thoughts are largely directly to the developers. And kind of thinking of someone who lives in a multifamily unit building currently. For that right turn lane, as you head in, we're near a wonderful bicycle facility with that trail really nearby, which is great. I'd propose asking for a raised sidewalk in entrance for traffic calming, just to make it safer for the users of that area to be able to access the public right-of-way for walking and biking. The affordability of this project is realistic and, not ideal. I'm an idealist. I'd love to see some more small developer types of things being brought. And right now, with the affordability that they're saying for a 524 unit square foot studio, we're probably around $920 starting, and that 2-bedroom around $1,700 to $2,200 a month. That was based on that 2 per square foot. I think that's about right. As someone that has a moderate income and lower than the average in Eden Prairie, affordability for a 2-bedroom at around $1,750 is not affordable, but we're working with the realistic building of a new development in an area that is supported well by the city. The main question that I'd like to see if we could get a response to is concrete and stick building and development is incredibly popular, and in my experience as a resident of a multifamily unit building, I'd just like to know how they would like to ensure that they're minimizing noise between different levels of the multi-unit building as well as to the sides. So yeah, fully supportive of the project, but I'd like to know, as someone with a unit with very squeaky floors and have had some really negative noise experiences in apartments. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, anybody else? All right, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing and continue the discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion for Commissioner Gooding to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Or second.
Second for Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor of closing the public hearing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, right, public hearing is closed. Does anyone have any comments out of the gates, or would want me to kind of work through some of the issues that came up first with the developer? Commissioner Meddy.
I have some thoughts. I'll start it off, hopefully. Not on a bad note, but I think overall the idea of putting an apartment development here makes sense in this location. But I think that what we're looking at is too much. Mainly with regard to density, but I think that especially when you look at next door, that PUD is at 23 units per acre. Even if you just look at the two apartment projects on their own, they're 26 and 29, and this one's 37 units per acre. Before even knowing those facts, looking at the site plan, that was my initial gut reaction on this. And now kind of understanding all the other pieces of it, I still feel that I think that this is too much density for that we're trying to pack onto the site. It spills over into the impervious surface waiver they're requesting, the numerous landscaping waivers. We touched on the parking lot islands. That's maybe kind of a side note, but I think that these very, very long rows of parking need to have some breakup. The tree replacement, I know we do typically grant waivers, and I didn't go back and look at the numbers, but this seems to be like by far the largest waiver that we would have granted for trees. I also think that the applicant's proposed use of pervious pavement to try to, decrease that impervious area, as far as I know in development, that is yet to be proven to be something that actually works with our snow plowing and salt in the winters. So I'm very doubtful that is a good solution. And I do think that the green roofs they're providing should count as credit against that impervious calculation. But overall, I think at 48.8%, that is too high for the site. I do agree with some of the neighbors' comments about screening. I think that an effort to screen is important, especially now understanding the topography of the site and what might be on the future site next door. And yeah, that's the sort of summary of my thoughts, but I'm looking at every waiver and I think it all comes back to the density that they're proposing here is triggering that. The only exception I think is the parking waivers are okay. I think in terms of the unit count and the number of parking stalls they're providing, I do think that's appropriate. But I think, again, overall, I think that this is too much density for this site.
Thank you, Commissioner Meddy. Commissioner Taylor, did you have a comment? Okay. Commissioner Goodett?
I've struggled with the same thoughts as Commissioner Meddy, and the density is an issue, but when you look at a development that's actually going to go in there and work, it comes down to what does it cost to do these infill developments, and what can you put in there, what can a developer put in there economically? And there's a trade-off. Could they do some things to mitigate, one of my questions was the light pollution, the individual with the fencing, they can be a common solution, I think. But is the trade-off to get some, relatively speaking, lower price housing in Eden Prairie worth the extra density? And in my mind, I've come to rationalize it probably is. We struggle in this city to get a price level for housing that somebody that is coming out of college or somewhere else and going to work can move into the city of Eden Prairie. And to do that, I think we need to get, in today's world, it means more dense. So I would say in that sense, I'm in favor of this. I think the developer needs to do some things to accommodate some of the comments that have been made, relative to screening and stuff like that. I'm not an expert in color selections. Don't talk to me because I can't hardly tell the difference between green and blue. But, the Applewood Point building, I've heard a lot of comments about people really liking the look of that building. So there's got to be something to that. So I think I've accepted the density, and I'm going to vote in favor of this.
Commissioner Kirk.
I concur with Commissioner Gooding, and to build on this, I was kind of I've been on the planning commission for a long, long time, and I was kind of an anti-density person initially. And in fact, I voted against Martin Blue, even though it passed, because I thought it was too dense. And I've come to the conclusion, a little bit reluctantly, like Commissioner Gooding, that Eden Prairie is growing, and the growth is probably going to be shown up as increased density in certain areas of Eden Prairie. And I think this is a pretty good area for the density to show up in. Would it be nicer if we could go with a less dense project here? Yes, but I agree. I think the economics probably aren't going to drive that. So it's growth driven. I think this is a good spot for it. I like the affordable component. Eden Prairie is pushing for affordable housing. So again, I'm repeating what Commissioner Gooding said. I do think the details are important. The details like making sure screening, fencing, some of those points that were made up, some of the points that have been made by the commissioners in our early discussions. I think those are important, and I think the developer really needs to think hard about some of those and put some time and energy into the details. But overall, I think this is something that is the future of Eden Prairie in certain places in our city. And this seems like, certainly the developer has a good track record, and this is probably a good project to go forward with in my mind.
Commissioner Higgins.
I would like to divert just one part of the discussion to the fact of traffic. I do agree with my fellow commissioners who are supporting the project as is, but I think there needs to be something that changes the way the traffic moves along Eden Prairie Road from the time people get off the highway and are headed for it and come into that area, and or coming off of some of the others, Highway 5 or whatever. That is a very heavily trafficked area. When we were doing the long-range planning process just a short time ago, there were a lot of discussions about the fact that we've got a high school not very far away, where the students are coming into that area, at different times of the afternoon and morning and all of that. Not just on school buses, but school buses. That's a big deal too. It's a big area. I've seen traffic back up a long way now. And we all try to get over it, but I think you've got existing neighborhoods that need to be considered, and I don't know quite how that's going to be approached before this development is up. But even if it isn't finished, if the whole plan for the future doesn't come together relatively soon, which I don't think we can because there's so much involved, we've got to find some other avenues for people to get through that area, and I don't have any answers, which makes me uncomfortable to support this at the size of the place that we're talking about. On the other hand, I have really been very eager to support affordability in Eden Prairie for folks so that they can live in this community as well as not live here, and I'd rather have them here than have to go further away. So that's kind of a confused comment, but I think it does reflect really what we heard in the public testimony, that traffic and the whole use of that street was not designed to carry what it's going to be carrying. that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. I was wondering, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kane, could you come up and maybe just ask a couple questions about some of the issues that came up? Just starting out some of the issues around the screening of the parking lot. Just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, around the screening of the edge on the east and north sides. Certainly looking at a fence line, I'm not sure if a full 6-foot fence is necessary. If we do something shorter to line with the plantings along that edge as well, might be a good, reasonable compromise in terms of how you deal with the headlights, et cetera. But our goal is to really plant and use landscape as best we can through there, because that is the most beautiful of the options to screen, but we certainly recognize that the challenges with that. I don't know if, Scott, do you think differently on screening or?
No, I agree with the combination of fence which is required for height and screening.
Yeah.
We'll study that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about the concerns about keeping people out of the adjacent wooded lot, or have you had any discussions around that?
Well, we've certainly got the retaining wall, and that wall varies in height from 30 foot to on grade. So that alone is a natural barrier. As we do fencing or plantings along that edge for screening, that'll certainly provide a level of, I don't say protection, but certainly control. People walking through. We don't anticipate people going down that path for any reasons. There's no amenity over there. That's kind of why this courtyard is important to our development, so it gets people attracted towards the building itself versus parking the perimeter and coming in. But certainly, again, with the fence line and with amenity space within, I think I don't see people wanting to go over there at all. The Dairy Queen's not over there; it's up the road, so there's no reason to cut through the woods to get to anywhere.
Thoughts about the conversation around the intersection and the traffic for your residents?
Well, go ahead.
So, this did come with a full traffic study that was commissioned by the city. And so that traffic study, the city and this traffic engineer picked those different intersections that they're going to study, all up and down Eden Prairie Road. This is an existing lighted interchange, right? So it's been underutilized strictly to the east for the 7 homes. So that traffic report, and Rod, I'm sure you have more facts than I do and can speak to it, but that traffic report currently now functions at an acceptable level. It's stated that it functions at an acceptable level once we open this project and add the 239 units. Let's call that 2025. And then it does function, I believe, out to a horizon of 2030 plus, based on future growth of this area as well. So there was a full traffic study done that was supported inside one of our pre-entitlement documents.
Mr. Chair? Sure, if I can interject. I appreciate Mr. Peterson bringing up that point. I noticed also that traffic study talked about the level of service being acceptable now and in the future. And, maybe just stepping back rather a ways, cities really do a good job of forecasting future growth. And so we're living amongst all of our infrastructure that is slightly oversized for where we are today, purposefully, so that we can absorb growth in the future. So we've been blessed with wide roads, big pipes underground that we can't see, so that we don't have to keep widening our roads and digging up our pipes all the time. So if you put the spin on it that, traffic's getting worse, I can understand that spin, but we should instead be praising the city to say, thank you for allowing us to have the wisdom to have pre-designed our infrastructure big enough so that we don't have to waste tax dollars widening the curb every time another building gets built. So I think we should just keep that in mind, that's why the traffic engineers and other people who look at utilities look at this level of service grading so that we can kind of watch that needle creep. And we're in a very safe zone. That's why they established those levels of service. And when the needle starts going up, that's when people start talking about paying for infrastructure improvements that haven't been anticipated. So That's enough of that. I just think it's clear that the studies have been done and the traffic can be handled adequately. I'll let you guys finish and then I'll talk about my opinions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. And then just lastly, the comments about potentially there could be a raised sidewalk. Try to raise sidewalk as you approach in, just to slow the traffic down a bit.
I wasn't quite tracking on the raised sidewalk in terms of, there's a new sidewalk along the western side near the turn lane. As you cross that, there is a sidewalk against the parking lane, the visitor parking row by the building. I don't know if I understand with the raised sidewalk, and we don't want a high curb so you can potentially fall off the sidewalk along the road lines. I don't know if I need more clarity on what that actually was implying, or...
No.
Oh, like a...
Yeah, so a traffic calming, keep people from going too fast.
No, yeah, that'd be fine. Okay.
All right.
I get a little confused on what a raised sidewalk was, but yeah, in terms of traffic calming measure through there, yeah, it's appropriate.
Great, thank you. And just it sounds like you heard the concerns and everything you can do to be a good neighbor and try to work.
Oh, absolutely.
And address with all the comments would be appreciated.
One question.
Yeah, Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you. There was some questions about kind of a noise survey in reference to the medical lab company that's there currently. Has there been any consideration in doing a noise survey? Because I don't think it would be fair to the company that's the medical company back there now that a year from now they start getting complaints about noise, and then the burden then becomes part of the company's responsibility to have to handle that, when we can take care of that up front to see if there's any concerns now.
Yes, Commissioner, and I guess my comment was, I believe in their letter they state they already conform to the current existing noise policies in place with the city, right? So I don't think we have an issue here. I also want to restate, we're replacing 7 existing homes, right? So those residents have already lived there, and the discussions we've had with these folks for the last 9 months, that's never come up. So I don't anticipate there'd be a noise problem. I'd also then just like to reiterate, we're taking buildings down that are probably 70, 80 years old and putting them in with brand new construction type constructability. So we don't typically do noise studies on suburban parcels that have a couple hundred feet of distance between buildings. I truly do believe just the constructability and the type of construction material we're using in today's industry, I'm just not that concerned with it, frankly.
Okay. Right.
I have a question for
Commissioner Singh.
Mr. Rue, I have a question, and I don't know
You can sit down
if you have the answer offhand, but that's Hennepin County 4. Are there studies showing that if you reduce the allowable speed limit, say by 5 mile per hour increments, that would result in an incremental or detectable reduction in vehicular noise?
I don't know if there's been a study, but typically a reduction in speed does relate to a reduction in noise. But it's really, the source of noise is usually engines as well as the tires. And so the slower you go, it's a different decibel level, but it's, or different tone, I guess. But to answer your question, this is a county road, and they would be, it would be up to them to change any speed limit. And I don't think, I don't know if it's 40 or 45 currently, but I wouldn't think they would reduce it. But that's, they would have to commission a traffic study or a speed study in order to determine if it's even viable. What they generally look at is the 85th percentile and the 50th percentile speeds. That's how they judge that, and most of those are determined by the state. The county would have to commission a speed study with the state.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Farr.
Thanks. A few things. I'm on this side of the aisle here, so I'm going to agree with my adjacent commissioners. I think this is a good project, and I'm okay with the density. But I do want to give Commissioner Meddy's point due credit. The first time I looked at the site plan, it seemed like it was just jam-packed. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, what's going to happen here? I looked at one of the wings, and the corridor is 2.5 or 1.5 football fields long in one direction. And I thought we were headed for a disaster here. But frankly, you know, this issue about density to me comes down to transitions between zones and transitions between neighborhoods. And as one of my commissioners pointed out already, I don't think this could be placed in a better location in Eden Prairie, given the goals that we have as a city, the council specifically, our guide plan, needs for housing, and the type of neighborhood that this is in. If you look at our guide plan map, there's some medium to high density guided areas due to the south and to the north or the northwest across the street already, and we don't have any other very sensitive zones next to this. Bless you. Just as a similar point of context, I know whoever spoke about the association across the road, I think that was Elizabeth Petrie, about some headlights as an example. Some of those transitional issues become hot buttons. And just as a point of clarification, there are no headlights facing west off the site. The other three sides of the property, the headlights do face north away from the property, east and south, but they won't be shining towards you across County Road 4. There's just a drive aisle on that side between the building and the street. So rest assured you won't have cars parking facing across, those headlights won't be across County Road 4. So I think they've done a good job of buffering, given the circumstances of their neighbors and where this project could be placed. Regarding the waivers that they're asking for, I covered the density issue. Parking stalls, I think they did a very good job of demonstrating the experience level with their markets. They know that if they're underparked, they can't sell the units. So I have a high confidence level there. The impervious surface coverage within the shoreland area I've talked about before. City engineer, and I'm sure the 9 Mile watershed district, or maybe it's not 9 Mile, it's probably Purgatory and all those. Yep, okay. They're taking a look at the project. I know we've got a great civil engineer on this project, and I'm convinced the stormwater is going to be a dramatic improvement over what's going on with the existing property as it is today. I think the design is contemporary. For those of you in the audience who haven't been able to see, they brought a physical sample board of the project that's been facing us commissioners all night long. And I think that everybody in the audience, inclusive of Mr. Hansen, would be very satisfied with the color palette. I am, as an architect, I can't speak for the other commissioners, but we're very satisfied with the color palette. I think it'll blend in with the city very well. The building height, those minor number of feet above the minimum, don't bother me at all. I think that, again, the scale of the building, the context, the setback from the road, all are appropriate to support that waiver. And the landscaping, we have strategically over time established these points of cash in lieu of tree planting in the ordinance for sites like this in the city, where there's a lot of very few development sites left. A lot of them have these challenges of just a lot of trees. We love trees in Eden Prairie. Don't get any other opinion about that. We just love trees. We like to see trees planted. We like to save trees when possible. And we know that trees need to be planted on all new developments, and they are. And we'll continue to endeavor to plant as many as we can. But in this particular case, trees have to be lost to put up buildings, and trees will grow back. So I'm in support of the project, and look forward to another successful project. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Farr.
Other comments?
Commissioner Meddy.
I'll just circle back. I'm an apartment developer. I develop apartments just like this in and around the Twin Cities. And so I'm kind of taking this from my own perspective on underwriting deals similar to this. I'm very confident this project could work with a lower density and still provide everything it has along with the affordability levels. And again, I'm in support of a project here. I think this one is just too dense. I'd like to see something closer to 30 units per acre, which is still the highest density project outside of the city core. Again, I just think we're going a little too overboard with how much density we're allowing here. And I think it stands out to me as an outlier beyond even some of the other higher density residential buildings we've approved. So just wanted to kind of share those thoughts. And to me, it's not that I'm not supportive of this project. I would just like the applicant to come back with something a little bit smaller scale.
Other comments or discussion? All right. I think I would entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
Mr. Chairman, move to recommend approval for the guide plan change from low-density residential and industrial flex tech to medium-high-density residential on 6.4 acres. Plan unit development concept review on 6.4 acres. Plan unit development district review with waivers on 6.4 acres. Zoning change from R122 and I2 to RM 2.5 on 6.4 acres, and preliminary plat of 7 parcels into 1 lot and 1 outlot on 6.4 acres, based on plans stamped dated October 27th, 2021, and the staff report dated October 27th, 2021.
All right, I have a motion for Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second it.
Second for Commissioner Gooding. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm a no.
Would anyone else like to abstain? All right. Good luck moving forward with your project. Thank you for all your comments this evening. Moving on, we have a planner's report, I believe.
She's getting there.
Somebody else can read that one.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, under the planner's report this evening, you'll see you have a draft code amendment for your consideration. At the City Council meeting 2 weeks ago, the City Council directed staff to prepare a code amendment to remove gas stations as a permitted use in the neighborhood commercial zoning district. So the amendment that is drafted and in your packet this evening accomplishes that. It also accomplishes a couple of other things. It provides for including language that would allow existing gas stations that are in the neighborhood commercial district to remain as permitted uses. And it also would amend the ordinance. There's another section of the ordinance that talks about the performance standards of how gas stations should be designed, how they should lay out in all of the commercial districts. And in that portion of the code, it lists all of the commercial districts by name. So staff in the draft, has removed the reference to neighborhood commercial for consistency's sake, so there would be no confusion moving forward. So staff is asking you to make a recommendation to the City Council on the code amendment as it's proposed before you this evening.
Thank you. Questions for Julie?
I have a question.
Commissioner Kirk.
Julie, I did not listen to the City Council meeting. Can you give us a little context, a little more context in where their request came from? I think I know, but I guess I'd like to have that confirmed.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, at the October 26th council meeting, the direction is simply as I have related on to you. There was not a broader discussion about that. Rather, there was conversation that was initiated looking for consensus among the council, and that consensus was granted to direct staff to come back with this amendment.
Thank you.
I assume this is coming out of our conversation when we were looking at the Hennepin Town Road and Pioneer Trail site that had that gas station there. That was a very large gas station. I think a lot of us had agreed that the idea of a gas station there maybe wasn't the worst thing in the world, but that one was just, a major gas station. It was just too big, something of a smaller scale. So I guess I was maybe expecting something where, gas stations in neighborhood commercials would be more limited than gas stations in other zoning, rather than just not allowed at all. So I don't know, I'm curious what people think, because, I think of a lot of the gas stations I use in Eden Prairie. I didn't go and look at all their exact zonings, but none of them are on like major corridors. A lot of them are kind of these neighborhood intersections and areas. So I didn't know if we thought this was maybe going too far and we'd rather just limit. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that doesn't even really get us anywhere by doing that, but just wanted to see if people had thoughts on that.
Commissioner Sanctus.
I'm wondering too, Julie, with respect to this amendment, what is the operational definition of a gas station? Is it simply a automated fueling stop all the way to a full service bay, set of bays with convenience store and ancillary repair shops?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, gasoline/convenience store is a term that is currently in the zoning ordinance. It is not a defined term. It's very typical that not every term in the zoning ordinance has a specific definition, but tends to be defined more by its operational nature. So there's not anything specific that would address, pumps where you're driving up and getting gas only versus just a convenience store or some combination thereof.
Can I ask a question? That's a good point to know, first of all, because that leaves a lot of ambiguity. And you think about things like, does it have any service? Like I'm almost seeing like a gas station should almost have maybe 2 different levels or whatever. Maybe we specifically say neighborhood commercial can't have vehicle service and whatnot, but on the point of convenience stores, because I feel like there can be convenience stores that don't have any gas, right? And is that a Walgreens? What do we think a convenience store is? And we're saying that we won't allow convenience stores here. So I'm a little bit concerned without a definition and then removing it from this, that might harm some other types of businesses or businesses that have yet to come to fruition with the onset of more electric vehicles on what a convenience station might look like in the future. So I'm wondering I think it would be helpful to define a gas station and a convenience store as part of this amendment.
I'll speak my opinion on that. I think the way I read this definition is anything that pumps gas is a gas station.
Yeah.
Whether it's part of a convenience store or a full-service gas station or whatever. So the way I would read this is anything that pumps gas into an automobile it would be included in this. And the reason I asked my first question and try to understand the context is I do have some misgivings like Commissioner Meddy does on would a 4-pump convenience store, gas station in the neighborhood be all that bad. I think I do agree that a 16-pump, relatively large store like we discussed was probably not the best choice.
I think my point though too, not necessarily the definition of the gas station so much, which is a little bit more clear, but I think we are technically outlawing convenience stores, and that's
I don't see where it says convenience store in there.
Let it go to Commissioner Gooding, please.
Just a quick question. How many neighborhood commercial areas do we have that potentially could even have a gas station or convenience store on them? Do you have any idea?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, right off the top of my head, I can't give you a specific count of the number of neighborhood commercial parcels that we have. I can tell you that within the city of Eden Prairie, we have properties that are zoned commercially in the commercial highway district, the commercial regional district, the commercial regional services district, the neighborhood commercial district, and the community commercial district. So gas stations in this scenario would be allowed in all of those districts but for neighborhood commercial. So there would still be a wide variety of commercial properties that could support gas station convenience stores.
Commissioner Fart. I'm with Commissioner Kirk on this. It's very clear. They're just talking about gasoline. And so I didn't listen to the city council meeting either. It didn't say anything about convenience stores, but gasoline is explosive, flammable, and it smells. And so I think those are a few good reasons why the council may say, let's try and minimize the exposure to private residences and keep them in more commercial areas. Soon we may be laughing at this because everything's going to be electric vehicles, and so someone's going to say, oh, why did they have an ordinance on gasoline when we're going to stop selling gasoline in a few years? But I think petroleum is going to be in our history for a while. But nonetheless, to me it looks like a safety ordinance as opposed to trying to outlaw convenience centers. If they were trying to limit traffic congestion at neighborhood intersections, there are all sorts of traffic generating businesses like convenience stores that could be targeted for that type of a complaint or a concern by council. But all I'm reading here is gasoline. And to me, gasoline stinks and it can blow up, and so let's keep our neighbors safe.
And I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here because I don't have a strong aversion to this language, but now let's apply it specifically. When we were sitting here talking about the Hennepin Town Road project, it seems like most of us were in favor of the idea of a small gas station, and by passing this, then no gas station can go on that site. So I'm just kind of pointing out that that's not quite what we had. I think a lot of us had thought would be appropriate there.
Yeah, I think that is correct. Right?
Yeah,
We just thought it was too big. Right. Commissioner Taylor.
Well, I think the aspect of being too big was encompassed with the total number of bays they were talking about having there too for mechanical repairs. And so if we do pass this, what would prevent someone from coming back and saying, okay, we don't want gas stations there, but we'll just build a station where we can have bay for mechanic work? And would that be, does that kind of offset or add a different layer of complexity to this whole concept as well?
Julie?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so automotive service repair is already a defined term and is a permitted use listed in that zoning district. So the direction by council was only for gas stations, not automotive repair.
That's very helpful context as well, because it seems odd to me. Again, our issue was these big auto repair, and that's still allowed there. So what is it that we and or city council kind of wants to accomplish with this?
Wasn't it it was the whole picture. It was the gas station, the car wash, the 16 pumps, the 10-bay service station, all crammed into that piece of property. That really was the no. They could have done a smaller gas station, an 8-bay repair facility. Yeah, Julie.
I'm waiting for the chair.
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I would advise you to consider the code amendment as it's presented to you rather than looking at it in the context of a specific application that has already been acted on by the city. So what is being asked of you this evening is simply to make a recommendation on the language as it's drafted, because City Code requires that the Planning Commission provide a recommendation to the City Council before they can take action on the code amendment that they have directed to be prepared.
Part of what I want to now know is what the city council feels then. Maybe they didn't understand the full context of then also auto repairs in the neighborhood commercial, and whether they also want to see an ordinance possibly removing that. That would be maybe a question I'd have, but yeah, I'm not opposed to this. I'm a little
You're not
hesitant.
opposed?
I'm not opposed to eliminating the gas stations from neighborhood commercial. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just a little bit hesitant about it because I'm not sure the ramifications.
Commissioner.
Yeah, this is a good discussion because my thinking's evolving on it. And, I hadn't actually thought about Commissioner Farr's comment about the safety issue. And secondly, it just, Julie's comment about the variety of zoning areas we have, where gas stations can be placed as opposed, so it's this, I was thinking of this as being maybe more limiting than it is. And I guess I'm leaning towards, and the other side of it is, the city council is our policy, kind of our ultimate policy setting body. And so unless I have a strong opinion, a very strong feeling on why not to do it, I guess I would tend to go with the city council on it.
I have one.
Commissioner Marcos.
One of my initial thoughts is this a slippery slope to, where do we decide when businesses in certain areas can or can't be, and where do you draw the line going to, okay, is it service centers next, is it other places? But I do agree with Commissioner Farr that maybe it is more of a safety thing. Maybe there's something more to it that gas brings to a community that some of those other businesses won't. And so I agree. I think I'm supportive of eliminating this in that district, and feel there are plenty of places for gas stations to live in Eden Prairie. And typically Eden Prairie residents are willing to drive to the gas station to fill up. So I pass many gas stations to get to Costco myself, unfortunately. So.
Other thoughts? I agree with Commissioner Meddy. It's a little hesitant with the ramifications, and I feel like we made up a good reason for safety.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth myself, but then I think about, are there any areas in Eden Prairie that are underserved in terms of their need for convenience stores or gas stations? I don't personally know of any, but maybe there are some residents that feel that there's areas of Eden Prairie that desperately need a gas station. But like when I think about it, I'm like, I think we're kind of covered. So this isn't like taking anything huge away. And again, there are other zoning codes that areas that
may
allow
I
it.
interject here? I think we're also, and this gets to Commissioner Farr's point, gas stations are rapidly becoming dinosaurs. And so I think we're looking at a future of electric charging stations, and that this is going to be a moot point at some point in the not too distant future. Mm-hmm. And as far as access to gas, I mean, how many commercial entities from an economic standpoint would simply want to put a filling station in a certain spot in a neighborhood? It's not economic. It's not worth their time to invest in that unless they add service bays, convenience store, and other amenities. So I'm okay with the language as is, but I'm glad we had this discussion.
Well, I think also Commissioner Kirk, they are the policy-making body, right? And this is.
Well, I mean, they are, but our job is also to let them know how we feel about it. So the value,
now they
again,
know how we feel.
I've said this before, the value of this is the discussion more than the vote, in a sense, because I will bet that all the council members will watch this discussion to kind of get a feel for it.
Right.
We'll say hi.
We're shedding light on this subject.
All right.
But I'm kind of at that point where I don't think it's that big a deal, and I would support it.
I would, unless no one wants to discuss some more, I would entertain a motion.
Chair, go ahead.
Motion? I move to recommend approval to the City Council of an amendment regarding gas stations in the neighborhood commercial parentheses N-com end of parentheses zoning district.
All right, a motion, Commissioner Sink. Does I have a second?
I'll second that motion, Chair.
Second for Commissioner Farr. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Would anyone like to abstain? All right. Thanks, Julie. Any other planners' reports?
No, sir.
Is that true? Well, then I will.
Members' reports?
I'll leave a members' report then.
I have kind of a member's report question.
All right.
First of all, congratulations, Julie, on your promotion to Community Development Director.
Yes. Well deserved.
The only reason I'm potentially not happy is I'm not sure if you're going to be our Planning Commission liaison anymore, so I just wanted to ask the question, are you going to still be serving your role here on the Planning Commission?
I will continue to be the liaison to the Planning Commission until the city planner position is backfilled. That position is currently posted, and so you'll see me for the foreseeable future.
And then my report was I was going to entertain a motion that duties be reassigned, so keep the planning commission.
Anyone would like to make that motion?
I would second that.
Yeah.
Take a vote right now.
Well, we're glad to have you, and thank you so much for everything you've
Julie,
done
you've
for
been
making this
wonderful.
commission move smoothly, and also all the things you've done to help we be able to be chair of the commission. Thanks so much for your work, and we're glad to have you
Thank you.
in an
Much
even
appreciated.
greater role in the city. So, thanks, Julie. All right. Any other reports? All right. Entertaining motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks, everybody.